Hey YouTube world, what's going on? Mark here from TST Industries, back in the garage. And as you can see behind me, we have a beautiful redesigned 2022 Yamaha MT-10. And in front of me, we have a full suite of Womet-Tech crash protection products. Now we will be doing individual installation videos, so be sure to stick around. But I did just want to give you a quick overview of the products we currently offer from Womet-Tech for this particular model. That way you can check out our website if you're interested. So to begin with, front of the motorcycle, we do have the Womet-Tech fork sliders. These are a pass-through axle system with 2 delrin end caps. Moving a bit back, we do have the Womet-Tech K-Savers. These are the exact same K-Savers that the Westby racing team used in the Moto America race series when we sponsored them. We also use them on our own personal race bike. This system is a 2 K-Saver system, 1 for each side of the bike, so be sure to check that out. Moving a bit back, we do have the Womet-Tech Frame Sliders. These are a single point frame slider system. Currently, as of July 2022, Womet-Tech does not offer an EVOS frame slider system for this bike. If the demand calls for it or if they decide to do that, that will change in the future. But for now, we will be doing the installation on the 1-point slider system. Going up from the frame sliders, we do have the Womet-Tech bar ends. By default, these come in black. We do offer a few different colored accent rings, so be sure to check out the installation video for the bar ends specifically, as well as our tech tip on how to replace the Womet-Tech colored accent bar rings if you're interested in that. And lastly, moving to the rear of the bike, for the swing arm, we do have 3 solutions. So the choice is entirely up to you, but starting with the smallest, we do have the Womet-Tech anodized spools. These are an anodized aluminum spool system meant to be a lift point with a little bit of crash protection. Going a little bit bigger, we do have the Womet-Tech spool sliders. Those are also a lift point, but they are a bigger material. They're made out of delrin, which is the same material that your frame sliders are made out of. And they are, like I said, a lift point with more crash protection than the smaller anodized spools. And lastly, we do have the Womet-Tech axle block protectors. These are the most expensive for the swing arm protection kit. They do have a spool boss installed on them, so you can thread on a spool that's included in here. They are meant to be a protection for the axle block, and you can also adjust your chain just like you would on the normal swing arm for this bike. And in this video, we will be installing the Womet-Tech frame sliders. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. So before we begin this installation process, I did want to display all the contents that are found in the Womet-Tech frame slider box and give you a blown up idea of how these installed and on which side. So if you're sitting on the bike looking forward, this will be the clutch side and this will be the brake side. And this is exactly how the assemblies will break down, starting inward from the motor and outward to the bolt. And lastly, if you want to install the provided black frame slider caps, you can. These just press right in. We always recommend applying a little bit of silicone if needed, and if you have, that way it just secures it in place. Sometimes riding vibrations can cause those to pop out. So on the clutch side, as you can see, you take the spacer, superimpose it onto the frame slider puck. You're gonna feed this shoulder washer into the frame slider puck as well. And then lastly, you'll take the collared washer, feed the bolt through it. This will be inside the frame slider puck. You'll feed that all the way through and then into the motor. And the same will be repeated on the opposite side, but with the slightly different hardware. For this installation, you will need an 8mm T-handle or hex key, Allen key to remove the OEM hardware, along with possibly a breaker bar. And then to install this kit, you will need a 19mm socket and a torque wrench. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. To begin this installation process, we obviously need to go ahead and remove this OEM frame slider bolt. It is important to note that this bike is upright. Anytime you're installing frame sliders, you definitely want the bike to be upright on a rear stand or a lift if possible. If it's leaned over on the kickstand, you can have misalignment issues with the frame to the motor. So make sure your bike is upright. One last thing to note is the tool used on this side to remove the OEM engine mount bolt is a 10mm hex key or Allen key. On the other side, it is an 8mm key. So let's go ahead and apply this attachment onto our breaker bar. And hopefully they didn't do 12 ugga-duggas on this bolt. From time to time, manufacturers do apply thread lock on these frame slider bolts. Doesn't seem as if they did it on this particular bike. And you can see there's no collar on this, there's no washer, there's nothing. Everything remained inside the frame to engine assembly. So we're gonna go ahead and take our entire frame slider assembly now and piece it together. Push that up against the frame and begin by hand threading that. Then take your socket and again continue hand threading it. You want to go slow, make sure you're not cross threading, making sure there's no debris internally. If you feel any hesitation, please back the bolt out. At this point I'm getting pretty far in there. The threads all seem clean, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the tool. Actually bottomed out at that point. So let me go ahead and grab our torque wrench. On this particular torque wrench, I like using the foot-pounds. So there we are, 40 foot-pounds. All right, now that that's torqued down, we can go ahead and move to the right-hand side or the brake side of the bike and finalize this installation. Coming over to the right-hand side of the bike, we already have our attachment on our breaker bar. That is the 8mm T-handle hex key, Allen key. Now it's important to note the other bolt was just a shouldered bolt. This side is not, but it does have this conical spacer that needs to remain in the frame. So please ensure that when you're removing this bolt, you do not bring that spacer with you. Now we can go ahead and assemble our frame sliders per the instructions. Spacer at the end, shoulder washer through the frame slider puck, and then collared washer and bolt through the entire assembly. Go ahead and grab the entire assembly. This is just a standard ratchet. I'm not using the torque wrench just yet. I just needed a better grip. All right, starting to feel a little tension there, which means we are getting close to the torque specification. And again, same torque specs, 55 Newton meters or 40 foot-pounds. And with that, this installation is now complete. As I mentioned, Womet-Tech does include some provided black frame slider caps. We do offer them in a few different colors if you want to change that. For installation, you can just press them in. We do recommend applying a little bit of silicone if you have it on hand. Just some all-purpose clear silicone does the job. You can see I pressed it in with no issues. If you just superimpose it, it will pop out as it did the first time. And sometimes on some of the more thumpier bikes, road vibrations and just the vibrations of the motors can push those out. So if you want to apply just a little dab or two of some clear all-purpose silicone onto the frame slider cap, that's never a bad idea. It is important to note, looking at the bike from the angle that you're at, the frame sliders are even. But as you get close, you will notice that obviously the left side with that longer spacer, it does stick out a bit more. That is because the frame is offset from the motor and the fairings and such. So don't panic if you see that and you're like, why is there a big gap here? It's completely normal. And with that, this installation is now complete. This will provide ample protection in the event of a crash. And again, these frame sliders, along with all of the other crash protection on your bike, is meant to minimize the damage that your bike will take in the event of a crash, because let's face it, every crash is different. But this is a pretty simple installation. The nice end caps for the frame slider pucks give a little bit of an accent color if you need it. Like on this all black MT-10, you can go with the white, silver, red, gold, or even blue end caps and just make a little pop in an area that's pretty boring. So if you want to check these out on our website, be sure to stop by tstindustries.com. The link to these exact frame sliders are in the description of this video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about these frame sliders or any other products, you can leave them down below in the comment field. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn the notification bell on to stay up to date with all the new and exciting videos we are putting out. And lastly, check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all username TST Industries. For now, this has been Mark from TST Industries. Catch you guys next time.